Hello once again, team. In this screencast, we're going to cover sections 4.5 and 4.6 and finish chapter 4. In section 4.5, we're going to talk about what species diversity is and why it's important. Species diversity is defined as the number and variety of species in a given area. There are two ways to look at species diversity: species richness and species evenness. Species richness is simply the number of species in a given area. Species evenness takes into account variety and is the comparative number of individuals of each species present. Let's look at the species diversity in this diagram. The two communities here actually have the same species richness with 6 species each. But community number 2 has more species evenness because it has more numbers of individuals of each species compared to community number 1. Species diversity varies from place to place around the world. Some places have high species diversity and other places have low species diversity. The most species diverse places on land are tropical rainforests. The most species diverse places in the ocean are the coral reefs and the deep ocean. The most species diverse places where fresh water exists are large tropical lakes. These photographs show how species diversity can vary from place to place. In the photo on the left side, that's Olympic National Park, and it's a very species diverse place. On the right side is a tree farm in Oregon. It's not very species diverse. It's low in species richness and species evenness. Places around the world that have a high number of species or are considered species rich tend to be more productive. They also tend to be more stable and more sustainable. The high number of species allows them to have a buffer or some insurance against things like wildfire, disease, or other natural disasters or catastrophes. In section 4.6, we're going to talk about how different species live together and the different roles that they take on in an ecosystem. An organism's place in its environment, or the role that it plays there, is called the ecological niche. It includes everything that that organism needs to survive and reproduce. It includes things like water, space, sunlight, food, and temperature. Organisms that have a wide range of tolerance and can handle a lot of different conditions are called generalist species and are said to have a broad niche. Organisms that have a narrow range of tolerance and can't handle a lot of different conditions are said to be specialist species and have a narrow niche. Specialist species especially tend to be sensitive to habitat loss and other disturbances in the environment. This diagram shows the different niches of different shorebirds living in this one area. Because their niches are slightly different, they can coexist and minimize competition with one another. This graph shows how the niche of the giant panda differs from the niche of the red panda. The giant panda, which is closely related to bears, has a narrow niche. It eats only one thing and can only live in a few places. The red panda is closely related to raccoons. It can eat a lot of different things and live in a lot of different places. The giant panda is an endangered species with an estimated 1,600 to 3,000 individuals left in the wild. There are multiple reasons why we think this animal has become endangered. First, it is a specialist species. Giant pandas can only live in bamboo forest where it feeds on the bamboo there. Secondly, human development has caused more and more destruction of this animal's natural habitat. And finally, giant pandas have a low reproductive rate. Giant pandas can only give birth to 1 to 2 cubs every 2 to 3 years. Species can play 4 different roles in an ecosystem. They can be native species or normally found in a given ecosystem. They can be non-native species or not normally found in the ecosystem or not native to it. One example is shown here. This is the Burmese python. That's from Burma, but can be found now in Florida because it was released when pet owners didn't want to take care of them anymore. Indicator species indicate the health of an ecosystem. They can warn you of any damage that may have occurred because of things like pollution, agriculture, or natural disaster. Because of this, they are good monitors of environmental quality. This diagram shows different invertebrates that can be found in fresh water at varying levels of pollution. The absence or presence of any of these organisms can indicate the pollution level in a freshwater system. Keystone species are very important species that many other species depend on. They have large effects on the types and abundances of species found in an ecosystem. The ecological roles they play, or the functions they serve, are critical in sustaining ecosystems. Pollinators and top predators are good examples, bees being pollinators and sharks being top predators. Another example of a keystone species is the American alligator, the largest reptile in North America. At one point, the American alligator was hunted and poached to the brink of extinction. In 1967, it was put on the endangered species list and given time to recover. Today, there are more than 1 million alligators in Florida. Today, populations of the American alligator are closely watched, and hunting and consumption can once again resume.